This is our second video on sexual assault. Now by this point you're at the end of the chapter and you're taking the test, or about to. As you can tell, force, in my opinion, is almost anything. It's not complicated. And even any body weight of a man on top of a girl is enough force to meet the definition of force for sexual assault, provided that she doesn't want him there. So in reality, in Texas, these issues are less about force and more about consent. Consent and fact. Obviously, this is a complicated world, and some people might do things that other people don't do in the privacy of their own home. So what looks like clear force here might be something that somebody wanted here. So just because someone held someone down, that doesn't mean it's without consent. It's force, but it might just be the way they do it. So the issue almost always comes back to consent. Now obviously in an extreme example, if the force is extreme, if someone's used a knife or beaten somebody up, then that can't be consent. But for everything that's going to be close to the line, which is what all the trials are going to be, it's going to be less about force and more about consent. Is this what they wanted? Is this what they agreed to, whether they said it out loud or not? And the consent, a little bit, is almost in the mind of the defendant. It's not written that way, but as a practical matter, it plays out that way, where we simply do not have the kind of law where you have to ask, Mother, may I do this? Mother, may I do that? Mother, may I do that? That is not the law. So actions by the defendant that are not objected to are consensual, probably. Now, this is going to come up in your exams, and you're going to be asked to do this throughout the rest of the course. You're going to have to judge credibility, because you're going to have two people say red and green, or yes I did, no I didn't. How do you resolve that? The answer is the credibility of the witnesses. Does what they say make sense? So for example, I'm claiming self-defense and I'm 6'5", 230 pounds, and I play linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that 5'2" girl came over here and said she was going to whip me, and I said I was afraid, so I beat her up. Well, that's what I said, but it doesn't make any sense, because I'm too big and I'm too strong and I'm a guy, etc., etc., etc. The same thing is going to be true in sexual assault cases. It's not attacking the victim as a whore. That is not what it is. If you say, we kissed, we danced, we hugged, we this, we that, we this, and all of these actions are consensual, and then at the last step, she said no, he said, she said yes. It attacks the person's credibility if everything they're doing speaks one way and they say the conclusion is another way. It's exactly like the previous video we just did on what are the facts, which way do they go. If they all go one way and the person in the face of that says it went the other way, they're lying. Same thing's true for the defendant. If it's someone he barely knows and he takes them out to a place and she's never been there before and they're not dating and he's rough and she doesn't like him and he says she consented and she said she didn't, he's lying. So the credibility is based exactly like what we talked about in the last video. You lay out the facts and you say this looks like this, this looks like this, this looks like this, this looks like this, and the credibility of the witness that matches most of the facts is probably the one telling the truth. Because in a trial, even though all the facts may seem one way, you're still going to have two people say yes and no, and you have to be able to sort that out. And so you do the credibility. But it's a similar analysis to what we just did on how do you weigh the facts. And if they shade one side, you can say that's the truth, and the other person is either lying or diminishing or not telling the full truth, and you need to be able to attack their credibility in making a decision on who's guilty or not.